Hello, welcome back to the Movie Soup channel. Today we are looking at a World War I movie, 1917, that was released in 2019. I remember watching this film back when it came out and it left a very good impression on me. Recently I decided to make a review of it and of course I had to rewatch it to refresh my memory and take some notes. I went into the rewatch being quite certain this review would end up being positive, praising the cinematography, of course, and maybe some good acting and the plot. Well, I was right about the cinematography. Everything else, however, let's have a look, shall we? The movie kicks off with the two main characters chilling on the grass. Is the goal of this scene to show peacefulness so close to the front line? To me, it showed rather the indifference, everyone being tired of war. The protagonists are hinting at the food shortages. I'm sorry, but Blake's puffy cheeks don't really go well with that idea. The two get a mission to deliver critical orders to another division stationed some hours away across the recently, and as we will see, very much still hostile territory. We are shown the best of the UK military leadership of the time, finding soldiers who happen to have relatives at the mission's stake and sending some absolute newbies on a super important mission. I have to say, I do not completely agree with this approach. To me, this looks like confusing motivation with desperation. A highly and properly motivated soldier will do his absolute best to complete the mission, while the desperate soldier might burn out before the real adversity is faced along the way. A desperate soldier will have his emotions drive him, not his cold and calculated mind. And to add fuel to the fire, the command sent some absolute newbies on this arguably critical mission. One, Blake, is clearly new or not used to the action, while the other, Schofield, has clearly seen some action but does not seem to be qualified to carry out a mission of this nature, nor does he seem to care. Nevertheless, the two are sent on their way, and we get a chance to enjoy the wonderful cinematography of this picture. Their trench traverse is a masterpiece of its own. The two move inside the same trenches, yet we can see how the world around them degrades the closer they get to the front line. We also witness Blake's emotions spilling over into unreasonable haste. Emotions start to run a bit high, and Schofield masterfully takes the lead and calms the situation down a little. Upon reaching the front line, boys are greeted by some soldiers who have apparently been recently ground by some real combat, in addition to experiencing the very same lack of rations. And yet, once the two boys crawl onto the battlefield, we can see that none of the frontline fighters were hungry enough to risk their lives to drag a reasonably close positioned dead horse back into their trenches. So, were they really hungry, or were they indifferent and effectively done with this war? If they were so done with it, then how did they get this far? How did they manage to swing the tide of war in their favor and push the enemy back to their homeland? Enemy that killed their countrymen and friends, enemy that was going to evaporate them from the face of the earth. How are you so done with this war when you are winning? Yes, the World War I was a trench war, a grinding, cruel kind of war, but still, how do you present exhaustion and indifference instead of self-consuming fury? Anyway, Blake and Schofield are up on the battlefield, making their way over to the bridge in the wire and the German trenches. Sko gets his hand cut, helping the kid through the wire, and of course, the latter is scared of a corpse when both hide in the crater from the two low-flying planes, causing the former to stick his cut hand through a corpse's chest. I'm sure that whatever disease he picked up would wait until 1928 or even better, 1940s. Also, if the friendly planes are flying so low over the enemy trenches and not get shot at, would that alone not indicate to the friendly fighters that something is amiss and maybe the enemy has retreated? Our brave warriors reach the enemy trenches, and Blake is acting all relaxed and manly all of a sudden. Why is that? Minutes ago you were all ramped up, then you were horrified, and now, when you are in the trenches that were occupied by the enemy just hours ago, and maybe still are for all you know, you decide to loosen up and joke around. We are less than 30 minutes in, and I'm already running out of patience with how stupid and unrealistic the plot of this movie is. Do the creators not understand how serious war is? Do they not realize the level of pressure and stress the protagonists would experience in a situation like this? You love your country and your family. For them, you've been through hell. For them, you took lives. And now 1,600 lives depend on your ability to traverse the hostile territory. This is no time for jokes. So Blake and Sko find an enemy bunker and check it out. Neither seems to know what mines are and the kind of tactics retreating enemy might employ, so of course they trip a mine in a confined space. Until now, what these two have managed to accomplish was unlikely but still possible. A few things had to fall perfectly in place for them to get this far alive and somewhat well. But now we get into the area of impossibility. It is impossible for them to get out of this explosion without being seriously harmed or killed. Blake should have been concussed at best or deafened and pierced by the shrapnel at the worst. Sko would also most likely die, if not from the explosion, then buried under the collapsed roof, or maybe barely survive as a cripple if medical help arrived shortly. Anyway, the only damage Sko sustained was some dust to his eyes. Nothing a bit of water couldn't fix, while Blake shakes off the blast in no time, digs out Sko from under the roof rubble, and both proceed to leg it across the collapsing tunnel. They rush ahead, not checking for more traps, and Sko, of course, has no problem jumping over a hole in the ground. Indy Jones got nothing on these brave warriors. So they get out and see a German artillery position which evidently was destroyed to prevent any further exploitation of the guns, a fact that somehow surprises our brave warriors, as if they would be more than willing to leave their guns and ammunition neatly packed and nicely displayed for their enemy, be they in the same position. Blake and Sko move on, cheer up, and start exchanging some war stories. How come Blake is now acting like the more experienced of the two? Wasn't Sko the one who's been through the meat grinder of the frontline warfare? Wasn't Blake the one scared shitless just minutes ago? Also, why are they chatting and feeling so easy as if they are walking in a park back home? Aren't you in the enemy territory? Don't you have a life or death kind of situation on your hands? The boys feel at ease and share some ridiculous stories that I'm going to pick apart in great detail. The story of Sko swapping his medal for a bottle of wine. I understand the point of that little story is to show how ultimately valueless are those awards and praises in the face of basic human needs. However, I have a problem with how this idea is presented. Honor is one of the critical parts of military service and one of the core concepts used to rein in the rage driving people to kill each other during the time of war. Missing this core value, you might as well be a killing machine, a compassionless murderer. And to me, Sko does not look like he is one. Exhausted, maybe even desperate, yes. Numb and murderous, not at all. Also, why the hell would a French farmer need his medal? It has no actual value, especially to a recently occupied and maybe also severely deprived French farmer, who, by the way, might get in serious trouble if other British soldiers see that medal in his hands and assume he stole it or took it by force, or even worse, cooperated with the occupants. Why not instead form that story to show the humanity at the heart of people and say, for example, that the also starved French farmer shared what little he had with Sko and the value of that seemingly trivial yet immense gesture meaning so much to him. And another gem of a story from Sko, him having hated going back home. What a great idea, an absolute piss poor presentation. You love your home, that is what you are fighting for, that is what you are killing for, that is what drives your tired and blistered feet across the battlefield, that is what fills your lungs full of air that reeks of gunpowder and gas. That is what drives your bayonet through the heart of the enemy, not the melancholy of having to leave the comfort of your house or the prospect of never seeing it again. The idea is great, but I want to see him enraged by facing the prospect of never seeing his home again. I want to see him driven to his absolute best to fulfill his mission and make it back alive. I want to see him enraged because 1,600 lives depend on just 2 unprepared messengers making it across the front line. Now we come across an empty farm, where our protagonists face their enemy for the first time under our careful supervision. They both saw what the enemy did to the artillery guns and have almost died by their trap, yet neither seems to be alarmed by the living cow, and Sko has no problem giving the left-behind milk a taste. No chance the animal could have been surrounded by mines or the milk poisoned. A German fighter crash lands on the same farm, and of course Blake and Sko save the enemy pilot from the burning plane. Sko hurries to get some water while Blake gets stabbed in the gut. The absolute ridiculousness of this situation is staggering. I guess the idea is to show that even the soldiers are humans who are good at heart. But do you not differentiate between good and naive? Between merciful and careless? Dragging the enemy pilot from the burning plane is a stupid, yet acceptable act. Stupid in the face of the importance of your mission. But then you should have tied him up right away while one of you had him at a gunpoint. You would ensure the person stayed alive, as he might have had some valuable intel, but you certainly would not risk your own life or the success of your mission to save someone who probably killed dozens, if not hundreds, of your countrymen, and just minutes ago was trying to kill more right above your head. Sko rushes back, shoots the enemy pilot, and we have a heartfelt moment with Blake accepting his swiftly approaching end. I have mixed feelings about this scene, as from one angle I feel sad for the kid. He was put in a situation with seemingly little to no prep and faced with a mission he had no chance of achieving, and this is supposed to demonstrate one of the ugly truths of war. But at the same time I feel angry because this is a stupid death caused by egregious incompetence, and, if I'm completely frank, both of them should have died a while ago in that bunker. No matter how hard it is to lose a friend, the war cares not, and Sko has to move on. Gladly, some friendly troops happen to have approached his position in complete silence, and he gets in a truck with some war boys. The melancholic page, with Blake in the lead, is over. So the movie now takes a bit of a twist, and we are going to see some action. Previously stone-faced Sko now starts to demonstrate some emotion, as if Blake made him feel something again, and having lost him, Sko now wants to fulfill their mission and save his brother. The internal drive that Sko now has comes to the fore, which is something others notice and sympathize with. A nice demonstration of camaraderie. However, the convoy faces a roadblock, and now Sko has to resume his solo quest. But Sko also gets a piece of friendly advice from Captain Smith. Make sure you have witnesses when you deliver your orders. Some men simply want to fight. Is this an implication that the British Army was ridden with insubordination? Was it common for a commander of an entire division to ignore direct orders from superiors? If that's the case, won't your witnesses have to disobey their own superiors to make a difference? If your option is to suppress subordination with more insubordination, then where does this end? How does your army remain organized? When crossing a wrecked bridge, Sko gets shot at, but somehow a nested German sniper misses him several times, and Sko demonstrates some truly spectacular combat abilities by quickscoping a sniper. What are the odds of that actually happening? Why would Sko pop his head out of the most predictable spot in front of the sniper's nest, instead of maybe circling the building? What are the chances that your quick aim will be faster than that of a stationary camped sniper or any warrior? More nice combat action from Sko by laying down some suppressing fire. I did not count his shots, but assuming he had a standard issue rifle at the time, Lee Enfield Mark III, with a mag size of 10 rounds, it would only make sense for him to reload upon reaching the building and before entering it. Sko finds the sniper, they shoot each other, Sko's helmet saves his life, but knocks him out cold. When he wakes up, it is already night. Only intermittent flares light up the otherwise pitch-black ruins of the city. Sko decides to take an easy walk. It lasts about as long as you'd expect before he gets shot at and the walk turns into a chase. And while Sko does not seem to have any idea how to utilize darkness to his advantage, he does know how to use his uniform's color when out in the open and under the bright light of a flare. Sko somehow loses his pursuers and observes a burning building. High-paced tension of the active chase is instantly replaced with the serenity of this moment, and Sko seems to assume the soldier standing next to the burning installation can be something else but an enemy. A safe assumption to make, which leads to another chase. This time around, Sko is saved by another miracle, a well-placed basement. This is where he meets a French lady with a child, a heartfelt scene, reminding Sko what he is fighting for, and while he is relatively safe and comfortable at the moment, time is of the essence, and he moves on. The short respite Sko got while in the basement was somehow enough for Germans to stop looking for him, and he stumbles upon two drunk enemy fighters. Sko tries to strangle one of them, while the other nearly catches him, so Sko decides to leg it and jump into the river. I yet again cannot fathom why Sko didn't stab both of the drunk fighters and instead chose to risk his life and the lives of 1,600 other men. Upon jumping into the river, which happens to have a fast tide, Sko is saved from his pursuers, but is also nearly drowned. Exhausted and barely able to take any more punishment, Sko gets close to the shore that is blocked by floating corpses. A very grotesque image of a truly ugly and uncaring reality of war. When on the shore, Sko hears a distant singing, follows the sound and comes across a pretty large group of British soldiers, all sitting on the ground in a neat circle facing a single standing singer in the middle. This scene is both quite lovely and an absolute nightmare. The choice of a song is spot on, as well as the performance. I like how you can clearly hear someone having natural talent yet no training. It creates a sense of authenticity for such a setting. However, the fact that anyone, can approach a large group of British soldiers without being noticed is simply unbelievable. How is it even possible? So, when you move into the recently captured territory and station in the forest, do you simply assume there are no more enemies potentially hiding somewhere around, intentionally or by chance? Do you assume the enemy can attack only in large and loud numbers, and only from one direction? I'm sorry, call me whatever you want, but this is stupid. Anyway, Sko gets some directions and proceeds to get to the front line, while the attack is about to begin. The trenches are swarmed with people. All the commanders on the ground are either incapable or unwilling to help, and it turns out the command post is some distance away. Imagine yourself in his position. You are surrounded by your countrymen whose hearts are filled with resolve, who are getting ready to press the enemy that's on its back foot, while you know that resolve is a result of a clever trick on the part of your enemy. And you are the only one who can stop it. You are the only one who can save these men, at least today. And all you need to do is reach the command post and deliver your message, but you simply cannot move fast enough, being in the relative safety of the trenches. Would you be desperate? Would you be desperate enough to jump out of the trenches and run? Run towards that command post? Well, Sko clearly is that desperate. He gets out of the trenches and walks. He f***ing walks. Are you serious? What is wrong with you? If you wanted him to walk, he could have done it back down in the trenches. Why does he start running only after the attack command whistle? Sko gets to the command post, somehow pushes through the guards stationed at the entry. I would assume that fact alone would have those guards face some severe repercussions, and addresses the commander in such a tone so as to be taken seriously. The attack is halted. Mission fulfilled, but for some reason the commander decides to have a little exchange with Sko, and tells him something along the lines of, "Today our orders are to stand down, and next week they will tell us to attack, and there is only one way this war ends, with the last man standing." While I understand the philosophical implications, I cannot accept that a higher-ranking military officer, a division commander, would openly express an opinion like that in front of his officers. Also, isn't this the essence of the military? Obedience and command? With opinions like that, how would he serve well and long enough to command an entire division? And with a nice send-off, Sko gets out to look for Tom's brother, whom he finds next to the wounded station. This scene is executed nicely, making it clear once again that maybe whoever directed this movie should have focused on personal interactions in the frontline setting. The movie ends with Sko looking at a picture of his family. What can I say to sum up this review? This film is as great as it is awful. Skillful cinematography and masterful, close-setting personal interactions are spoiled by the lacking plot, that is also full of incoherent philosophical ideas. And while this movie is most certainly worth watching and rewatching, to enjoy the former, you will need something to help you tolerate the latter. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then leave a like. If you did not, the other button still seems to work. And if you really did, consider leaving a comment and subscribing. But for now, a goodbye.